Okay, so welcome again. Now from the tools perspective, what you see on the screen will be a very busy slide, okay? And by the virtue of that, you have realized that lots goes into doing this, okay, as an activity from an execution standpoint. And as a consultant, you need not know everything, right? As simple as that. What you need to know, what is typically used, and of course more of it will come as you mature into the system and you've been using that several times over, but you need to know how the process works, right? That's the larger approach here. It is not about going to a specific tool and start executing it. It's not humanly possible by a single person to do everything on its own, because these tools are very, these are expert level tools and have to get kind of come to everybody has to come to that point of using it in an expert fashion for the digitalization exercise, all right? And it's not just one person, it has teams and teams of people who go into play. So with that said, I'll cover the superficial level so that you can understand the tools that are going into it. So this has been picked up from CSM, our group kind of holding company, which dwells deeper into consulting of such activities. And this entire activity itself is called a race framework, okay? And if you remember your digitalization, when we were doing it at a P2P level, right, you were asked to get to a point where you understand your own race core, if you will, right? This enables also organizations to understand where they are with their digitization, right? And then so the digitalization as an exercise, it gives you a detailed report. And that also helps people like us to understand what is the level of digitization and what is the level hence for the digitalization that will come into play, okay? So what does RACE framework do, right? It does the readiness assessment, it does the readiness assessment for the organization by the virtue of RACE framework. Based on that, we provide the advisory. Based on that, the consulting, which is the systems that follow suit, right? Creating the roadmap and this and the other comes into play. And then the last exercise is how one executes it. So for that, we use something called a TAPES framework, right? TAPES is nothing but an acronym for transformation, for amalgamation, and PAM. PAM stands for, in fact, amalgamation stands for integration. PAM stands for process automation, all right? And then enrichment. So TAPE, transformation, amalgamation, PAMs, and enrichment. Enrichment is the value addition that is given over and above the digitalization process. So with that said, the next step towards this typically as an exercise would be that we go about doing. Okay, you would have seen a pause because the mic was supposed to come on. So, so from a TAPES perspective, right? S is the remaining element, which stands for sensitize. But I was talking about enrichment, right? So the value addition that you give over and above the execution, which could be servicing and the continuous improvement or the data insights that come into being from an AI point of view, so that the decision-making process can be taking place. So that's the part of enrichment. But from a sensitized perspective, it typically dwells with elements, as I mentioned, right, the AI and then so on and so forth. But managed services, which includes continuous improvement or something as a service, right? We typically use something like ITIL4 and so on and so forth for enabling those activities, because now business and technology, I mentioned earlier, right, in one of the other rises, is come together. So services is done as a single source because technology is imbibed into all the businesses now, right? And this becomes like a natural reality or an extension to whatever business services that is being performed, okay? So enrichment does that. Sensitize does the decision-making process in terms of data insights and other elements. We talked about, so the TAPES is the framework, right? We talked about that. Now, each of these, right, require partners to get into the execution mode. Now, for example, what we talked about transformation. Transformation goes through the whole element of technology transformation, that is, where modernization, that means the legacy systems that were being used earlier, we talked about ERP, we talked about infrastructure and so on and so forth, when they have to move into, say, a cloud, or where the applications which were getting, earlier native, that is on your local PC, and this have to now get into cloud mode because the people who are traveling can be they start using it, and it can be part of the data center where it exists. So those are modernization claims for the newer element for digitalization activity, which suffices the need for the larger ecosystem change and automation, right? Then mobility application, because every platform should be using, and so that activity comes into existence besides the digital applications, right? Now, all of this is nothing but your word processors, your spreadsheets, your graphics that you use, or your modern day user interface applications, right? Besides the normal ERPs that you use, ERP, the enterprise resource planning systems like the SAPs, Oracle, or the Azure, the large system level, right? At a local level, that means at a personal level, these things are not so required because the advent of work is not so heavy or as high, right? You can deal with your local, smaller elements of activities that you do from accounting or this and the other, or even you outsource those elements, right? So when we're talking about this framework, this is only for larger activities of digitalization, because digitalization largely at an organization level will require and have larger infrastructure, okay, as simple as that. So let's jump into CRM, right? CRM or HCM or SCM, these are large systems that are at play, right? They require large hardware, large software systems or platforms which are at play. So all of this modernization activities we discussed earlier will go functional, right? So that is part of the transformation activity, right? The T of tapes. Now, amalgamation is where integration comes in, right? Now, some of the systems will be inherent, that means is used in the organization as part of the organization. Like an ERP cannot be given out, though it can be used as an ERP cloud, right, on the cloud, where it belongs to that organization. But it is native to, it is in that sense in a private network of yours which is being used, right? Public doesn't have authority or authorization to use them, right? All of these ERP, CRM, HCM. And incidentally, whoever doesn't know this, I think these can be Googled out, but because this you should be knowing, right, if you're getting into the whole digitalization gamut of things, because these are normal industry terms, right? And since I talked about it, let me also explain what it is. So ERP is enterprise resource planning. CRM stands for customer relationship management. You would know this also, the typical Salesforce of the world and the others. Human capital, the HCM is the human capital management, right? You use HR systems for these things, right? SuccessFactors and Ramco and Oracle and various others available out there, which are dedicated to these activities. PeopleSoft and all, there are too many of those. So supply chain management, SCM, right? Again, all gamut of things out there which exist, right? Right from Manhattan to JDA to Blue Yonder, which is the new name for JDA, as well as SAP supply chain management system, which has different names now. So all of these things are being used while doing the whole transformation activity, and once you have completed, or it doesn't complete while you're doing the integration, right? Because this is ongoing. The integration helps you work with your external. So I mentioned the private network, which consists of all these elements. Then you also might be subscribing to the other part of the world, which would mean using other third-party applications, which would be in a different platform. But they require to get integrated, because you don't have to, you don't want to create a new application for which something exists out there. And any organization wouldn't want to, right? Because it's, again, just replicating what is existing out there and paying more for it and managing it and so on and so forth. So any third-party application is used that has to get integrated with your current system so that the data flow exists, right? So to do that, there are special large enterprise related integration kind of infrastructure. Some of them are mentioned there, like the Boomi, the Amazon Web Services is one of the other one. TIPCO, and then Zapier we mentioned for our local P2P activities and so on and so forth. But largely integration ones. Now typically most of the larger enterprises come with integrations already in place and are open for a lot of third-party applications, but there are new ones coming out every time. So you use some third-party specialist, rather special integration engines. I mentioned Boomi, that's held by Boomi is one of the engines by Dell, right? There's MuleSoft and the others. So there's so many of those, which then you use depending on their peculiarity and your usage for the larger digitalization activities, and then you use your third-party application as an integration to your ERPs and the CRMs or the others, so that there's clear data flow and the outcome and the reports and the decision making happens with the virtue of that. Okay. In this process, there are again process automation related enough application that exist which can be used over here, right? Both from so there's something called data the process mining and process automation, right? So both these things, there are specific applications out there which a lot of larger organizations use. Why? Because this is part and parcel of the decision making process, right, at the topmost level. And the data which is coming from this as virtue of mining and so on and so forth help them improve these systems also. Okay, so A is reconciliation, B is for improvement, and that holistically provides them the enough ingredients to provide the decision support activities. All right, and whatever decision they take is coming from the data enabled outcome that has been with the virtue of the optimization that has been done. Then the enrichment, as I mentioned to you, right? All this cannot be performed by the organization themselves. So they look at third-party partners to help them do this. So enrichment is managed services, which will help, ticket resolutions, which will help if something is broken to mend that, because whoever is executed will be better doing that rather than the new ones coming into play, and so on and so forth. So managed services is a gamut of activity which does that. Okay. Typically, the larger organization use third party because only specifically to run their specific operations or to manage the tickets, that too at the minuscule level. For people who understands ITIL, right, there's level 1 to level 4 and so on and so forth, and the tickets that come into play for resolutions. For third party, they keep it at maybe at L3 or L4 level because they've developed the systems and they can change. And these are high ticket. What is meant by high ticket is the priority is high. All right. At the same time, it is done by the people who are expert for that application or that infrastructure requirement or that particular system. Okay. So hence, the larger organization outsources that. Okay, and hence the managed services. So it's a deeper topic, guys. You might get a little overwhelmed, and also I'm hesitating mentioning so much deep details so that you don't get confused in the process. I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. But wherever you're getting stuck, let's meet at the right circle and talk about this in more details, right? I know it will get confusing, but if you're new to this topic. If you're not, you'll probably sail through very easily. Okay, so I'm moving on. Okay, I'm not going to the tools because you can read the tools what it is and you can search for them so you understand what each of them does, right? It doesn't mean you start learning them. It is not. That is not the purpose behind this. It is more so just to get acclimatized what goes into each of these elements, right? Now, if you see sensitize, right? Data insights. I mentioned that the mining of processes and the various connection with the external and the internal systems will help people make decision making possible. Now, imagine that because of virtue of this integration, so much data is getting collected. So there's some technology called big data, if you understand, right? That big data requires, AI speciality and things like NLP from a social media robot perspective, right? Where they can extract data from the external public domain. And once all this data comes together, right, you would have learned, you would have heard about machine learning, right, where you create systems where you make machine understand and learn with time that what you're looking for comes out automatically over a period of time, right, quickly, because it matures with time, right. So you train those systems. So AI is a gamut of that activity where large data sets can go through in deeper details to get the outcome you required, right? So it does things like preventive maintenance, for example, right? It gives you beforehand information of a machine failing, for example, right? Or a process which is, or rather a event that is going to happen by the virtue of data that is got collected, right? Which you would otherwise manually know once the event is taking place, right? So a typical example in a most simplistic fashion is when you enable an HVAC system, right? Which is heating, ventilation and air conditioning, and you put smart meters in place. The data from smart meter is collected almost every hour or every minute, the way you kind of device it, and the collection of data lets the implementer know that at when is this AC going to fail or is requiring services before it fails, or the mean time between failure is so much. So much ahead of time, maybe a month before whatever you programmed it to, will let you know that you start doing the servicing, otherwise this will fail, right? That's a very simple example of a preventive maintenance, so to speak, using AI. But at a organization level, these are smaller tactical things. But the larger decision making is when they understand the financial reports going into play, competition reports going to play, geographically what is going on as in terms of in the world, and what will result into your situation, or the warehouses in the X organization has created so much of ruckus, and all that element when comes and creates a big data. And every quarter when the C-level has to take a decision, right? This data helps them get that better insight for them to take decisions, okay? Hence the digitalization activity, right? And tomorrow, once they are putting a new plant for a new line of business, if this entire system is automated, it's a matter of, earlier it used to take years, it will take days for them to convert these things accordingly. So once the layer of transformation is completed, the integrations are in place, you have managed services to take care of services elements, and then you have these data insights, that is, you have your AI, etc. engines giving you enough reports, which is giving you decision making much ahead in time, right? Imagine putting all this in plane in synchronicity, right, where everything is talking to each other in the right fashion, giving you right input and right decision, and the reports are out. How easy it is for the management to take a decision and start doing a new line of business, right? Because the operations are all automated. So they know it's a flick of button. If they start a new business, the basics are in place. It's a question of putting the new manufacturing and then adapting that into the new system. Simple, where you again put a plug and play by the virtue of integrations that you've created. So this is the power of using various tools to do this with various layers, right? So it's part of the framework that was mentioned earlier, but now you've got a holistic view, right? And to do all this, some of the tools are mentioned there, right? But there are more than that. But if you see the left hand side, the essential tools are typically like a digital adoption platform, very important. Then you have digital workplace suites, right? Now these are newer things that have come to play because of digitalization, which is now maturing. And then team collaboration, social internet, cloud CRM, HCM platforms, they're subscription based and so on and so forth. All this have come into existence, right? So with so much happening, right, you would have got a little view of what needs to, digitalization is not a simple process. You go out there and just do it. You will have to dirty your hands a lot and several times over. But if you know your niche very well and you know your frameworks very well, this is good enough for you to become a consultant and go interface a customer, right? But at each step, you might want to have the relevant partners associated or contractors associated with you, so that if there is further details required, you do a joint one with them. Okay, so that's where the diversification actually happens for you, because now you're moving into a bigger charter to start working this as a business where you have a system of operation along with other stakeholders as your external partners who are meaningfully contributing to the business. Okay, I hope this is not confusing and not overwhelming, but digest it, see it several times over until you do, and if you have the relevant questions, we'll take it on the right circle. Okay, with that note, let's jump to the next one, which is executing this. Okay, I would have covered certain topics from there, but let's go there and I'll see you there in a minute.